Hi, good evening. My name is Jay Rothman, and welcome to Real Men, Real Talk Live. Hi, good evening. Again, my name is Jay Rothman, and welcome to the show. I'd like to introduce my co-host this evening. We've got Evislove Heath, the man of the land from down under. He calls Australia home. Welcome to the show, Evislove.
Thank you. Brother.
We also have Josh Richer from Santa Monica joining us live. Welcome to the show, Josh.
Great to be here as always.
And of course, we have Mr. Jeff Fasano. He calls Nashville home today. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Rothman, sir.
Well, thank you, guys. It's been, I can't believe another week has passed.
Right.
And before we jump into the show, just a couple of opening announcements I'd like to make. First and foremost, now that Josh is off the studio set, out of production in Los Angeles, we are going to change our show. Next week, we'll be coming in live again on Friday evenings in the USA. Friday evenings, same time, same bat channel, same station, 6 p.m. West Coast, 9 p.m. on the East Coast. Next Friday night, we'll communicate that through our Facebook feeds over the week and Instagram as well.
And real quick, Jay, I just want to thank everybody. Seriously, thanks for jumping over to Tuesdays and joining us still and being our amazing, loyal, wonderful fans. You guys are incredible. And so just deep gratitude for you all adjusting your schedules to be with us. So we love you.
Well said, brother.
I also wanted to just welcome all of our viewers tonight. If you hear something that you like or love, with love, gently tap your love button on your monitor. And if any questions to come up for you during the show that just kind of you want to drop in the comment section, drop any questions you may have, and or this is not a monologue, it's a dialogue. It's a virtual studio, which means that you are part of the experience, you're part of the show. And so we welcome your comments, any questions you may have, and we'll do our best to put them up there and acknowledge as many as we can in the time that we are live and on air. Other than that, it's amazing. Another week has passed. Last week, we really dissected and explored No More Mr. Nice Guy and why do so many women attracted to the bad boy. Well, this week we're shifting in a high gear, and we are going to go right after a topic that gets hot pretty damn quick in most relationships. Sometime between 3 months and 6 months, we start to already see some fractures in the foundation, the structure of relationships. We start to have disagreements, arguments. Some refer to as fighting. And so tonight's topic is all about the big last fight. And within that, there's so many different areas that we're going to kind of hone in on and discuss tonight in our conversation. And some of them that really come to mind right off the gate for me, one is there such a thing as a healthy fight? I have, there's really a disparity within, even in this society, as to there are some people, some professionals that believe fighting is healthy because it's a way for us to get our emotions out. So that's going to be one of the big questions that we're going to all explore. Another one is, do you fight to be right? And how old are you when you're showing up in that fight? Are you your chronological age, or are you perhaps a younger age in that moment when you've been activated, as Sue Gaskell says, coming in from New Zealand, or are you triggered in that moment? And is there a winner and a loser? Who wins and who loses at the end of the fight? Or is it just a draw? And so with that, I'm going to say, ever since you are sitting right next to me tonight on the top shelf in this moment, I'm going to invite you to warm us up and kick the show off.
Thank you, Jay Rothman, man, and my brothers on the other side of the pond, my sisters. Thank you, as always, from the bottom of my heart, here in the land down under. We've entered into the ring. Ding, ding, ding. what is this thing? Is there such a thing, like our brother just said, as a healthy fight? Is there such thing as being able to move through? You think we've been in a big year. A lot of people may say we've had to fight all year through a lot of challenges, through a lot of obstacles. So I think naturally many of us may be in that sort of state of being that we call the fight. For me personally in my life, I've, been through many fights, not only physically, metaphysically, emotionally, but also mentally and spiritually. Do we need to fight? Is it about the challenge that is within the fight? Is there possibly lessons to be learned within the fight? Or is it time to put down the gloves, surrender, throw the towel in, look in both corners, maybe look for a ref, a coach, someone from outside of the boxing ring to look inside of that fight and maybe be able to really sort out what underlies beneath that fight. So, I'm looking forward to diving in deep tonight on at Real Men Real Talk Live when we share our truths about the fights within our lives, but I think also most importantly, the fight that we may be going through as a collective here on planet Earth.
Tons of great points.
Really?
Wow.
Wow. I think everybody should tap their love button on this show.
Let's go.
All right, Jeff. All right, you just you're starting to heat us up. You might as well keep it going. Get in the flow.
Oh man, I'm not a big fan of the word fight at all. We have to fight through it. It's a fight to the finish. Everything's a fight. Also, the fight to cure cancer. The fight to this, the fight to that, a fight. Even in the broad word of it, the broad spectrum of it, I think it all reflects upon the fight we're having inside of ourselves.
There you go.
Is there a fight inside of you that's causing a duality within yourself? Is there a fight inside that's going on inside of you where you're fighting yourself constantly, questioning yourself constantly, not secure with yourself, not honoring, valuing, and loving yourself? So there's an internal fight going on, and that just leads to external fights, external challenges for yourself that you set up based upon the fight you're having inside of yourself. I'm just not a big fan of the word fight at all. And I know we'll get into, is there a healthy fight? I don't think so. I don't think there's a healthy fight. Fighting, the term fighting for me means isolation and separation. And the reason why I just said, let's tap your love button. When you just think of the word fight, and I invite everybody just to close their eyes and think of the word fight, move into your heart, fight. How does that feel? How does the word fight feel? And what is your definition to the word fight? To me, it's separating, duality, isolation. It has nothing to do with love, communication, or togetherness, or intimacy. The word fight for me has to do with separation.
Beautiful, Jeff. Beautiful.
Separation. So that's where I begin tonight.
Beautiful. Love that. Jeff Fasano. Heating us up out of the starting gate. Yeah, you raised some great points there as far as, what's the feeling? How do you feel when you get triggered? And you hear something that activates you to come back either in a defensive mode or in the aggressive mode. I love that. And Josh, we already have viewers are lighting us up here. A bunch of things, bunch of great comments coming through. Josh, before you go in, I'm actually gonna post something up here. Jolene said, I'm trying to come back to it now. Jillian says fights contain resistance.
Mhm.
And Jolene actually asked, what is the lesson when there is resistance? So Josh, I'll give you a moment here just to pause on that question. And why don't you start wherever you're comfortable. Like, what's this right fight all about? And
Well, and the resistance, Jeff, when you had me close my eyes and think about the word fight, the first word that popped into my head was me. We make it about us. It's not about compassion for the other person or trying to listen to the other. What is the other person trying to communicate? What's underneath their words? What are they trying to tell you from their heart? And, people at different stages in, sort of life, the life journey will either be able to communicate that better or, and there's a good number of people out there who can't. And so, where I found my peace in the resistance, just like she was talking about, was when I took it out of myself, when there was a confrontation and I took it out of myself and making it about me. And I started to listen to the words the words between the words that the other person was saying. I was like, what are they? They're communicating that they're scared, or they're communicating that they need to feel loved, or that they're threatened, or to read between the lines. But when we make it all about us, we start creating all these stories, and there's no time to listen to that active listening like we're talking about. And so for me, the resistance was that inner, that person sparking that, all those inner demons, and the times that we question ourselves or make up these stories about ourselves, that it is about us. And when I was happiest was when I flipped it on the other person. I said, what are they communicating to me? And then met that with compassion.
Beautiful, Josh.
That's when it diffuses everything. It's not a fight anymore. It's like, wow, they're trying to tell you how they need to be loved, or how they need something that they need.
Well, it's great comments, Josh. But here's where I'm going to push back a little bit.
Go for it.
On the defense,
Josh. Discussion, right?
Get ready for the fight, Josh.
I'm not sure. Last week's female guest we had in the studio, Ozzy Osbourne, I'm not sure that she is in agreement as far as, can fights be healthy? I've spoken to a number of therapists over my lifetime. I was under the care of marriage counseling during my marriage to help teach us how to have a healthy fight. And matter of fact, my interview yesterday with one of the hosts that was coming in from, I believe, Australia, she is a therapist, and she believes, my understanding from what I could read between the lines, that it's important for people to have the fight because it helps get the emotions out. And so here's my own personal perspective on it. This is just my own experience because I was in the fight for many years, and not only with multiple people, it just didn't matter who it was, but it's important that we do express our emotions and our feelings, but there's a healthy way and there's a hurtful way. And a healthy way is when an individual can say how they feel without raising their voice, going after the hot spots, the things that they know will piss you off or me off, because they know that's a hot spot for me that I've already disclosed to them in maybe an earlier time of my own vulnerability. And so as soon as a person is screaming or yelling at another person and it escalates, doors are slamming, things are being thrown across the room sometimes. Sometimes it can get physical. It happens. In that moment, is there respect for the other person? And is there respect for ourselves? Because usually at some point when the fight's over and we're cleaning up the mess, some of us go to guilt and shame, and we feel really bad, and we beat ourselves up for how we showed up in the ring. So not only are we disrespecting the other person in that fight, but we have lost respect for our own self, our own ability to show up and grow up. And what I mean by that is I was listening to a podcast last night, and this doctor was saying how her understanding is that when an adult shows up in a fight, they are never their chronological age. They are always somewhere between 0 and 7. She landed on 5. She just threw that number out. She said, "You're always 5 years old. It's your younger self." So I just wanted to put that out there in the universe, and I invite our viewers and listeners, if you don't agree, that's okay. We welcome your perspective. It's just a perspective. It doesn't mean it's right or it's wrong. But we are absolutely, we welcome your perspective and your thoughts on this. And again, ask any questions that come forward. Ev, what do you make of what I just, go ahead, Josh.
I think, if we boil it down, we're talking about reacting versus responding.
There you go.
Yeah,
There you go.
There you go.
And what does that mean?
Yeah, exactly.
F.
Well, let's dive in, brother. Let's dive into it. And it's beautiful that you bring up that, man, because just look at this word, all right? Let's I've got it over here on the etymology. A couple of us, we've talked about that idea to combat, that idea for struggle, that idea for resistance. So if something, to me, definitely is in resistance, there's something that is not moving. When I talk about everything, I'm always talking about this energy. So if there's a blockage, this energy is not being able to move or be guided or projected, then it's just neutral. It's just neutral. Now, what we're talking about here with either reacting or responding, what's the term that we always talk about when we're in a state of survival? It's fight or flight. You see, when we're going into this fight or flight state, and this is where we've got to really start being emotionally intelligent and start to understand, like I keep saying, these hormones. What's that feeling? Even just hearing that word fight, it cringes me because it takes me back. Like Jay said, and I've mentioned this in previous shows, my childhood seeing all that crap was not a really serving childhood. So when I hear that term fight, I feel it. I feel some of those emotions. I feel the heart just race a little bit more. People, when they go into these fights, to me, it sounds like it's the very result of the underlying issue that could have been solved previously. So we're repeating certain things within our lives that have not been solved. We're not getting down to the root cause. Think of those adrenal glands pumping out that stuff like adrenaline, the cortisol, the stress. Where is really the stress within your life? You've got to look in the mirror. I know for me personally, when I saw that behavior even fizz up in my belly, and when I talk about the physical fights that I've been, I literally was in the ring. I went into the ring and kickboxed professionally. So it was never felt right to me being in the ring. If you enter into any fight, you are entering into a set of rules. And to me, you're either in competition or you're in cooperation. So please let me ask you, brothers and sisters, how can there ever be such a healthy fight?
Yep. A healthy fight.
I don't think there is. And I'm with you, Jeff. I don't like the word fight.
No, I think we have to bring. We've taken a couple of words in the real men, real talk vocabulary. And we X'd them out. I think fight is going to be one of those after this show. That's for sure. Jay, when you're just talking about that the woman who said, when an adult shows up for a fight, it's the 5-year-old. So is an adult showing up for a fight? The adult is never showing up for the fight. If we were actually in our adult self when a disagreement happens, and we're in our adult self, in our healthy adult self, and staying in that place and know how to communicate and work through things, we will know when that wounded 5-year-old, that wounded 10-year-old comes up and feels the trigger. Because what's being triggered is that 5-year-old and that 10-year-old. So it's about understanding where you're being triggered inside of yourself in that moment, develop some tools to notice that, whatever you need to do to release the charge when you're triggered. So you're not projecting the energy outside of yourself onto that person. Thus, your 5-year-old blaming mommy and daddy for what's happening to you right now.
Beautiful, Jeff. I love that. Bronnie Fisher joining us from Australia. By the way, we'd love to know where you guys are coming in from. Viewers and listeners, drop it in the comments what state, city, or country you're coming in from. We know where some of you are. Bronnie, you're coming in from Australia. She says, fight to me means I feel threatened.
There you go.
Yep.
Chad Fox said, well, what if we, I'm going to paraphrase you, Chad. He says, what if we change the word from fight to argument or disagreement? Does that make it okay? And Joshua, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I feel like all we're trying to do is express our feelings in the moment. And I don't believe that has to be, I mean, of course, feelings are charged, right? But we can take that second before we react, take a breath. And I've literally in a relationship where somebody came at me on the attack, and of course I'm tempted to attack back. That's just, it seems like you need to meet like energy, right? When a big charge comes at you, you need to meet that big. And even in that attack, I stepped down and I literally said, ouch. And I said, that really hurt my feelings. And I don't think you meant that. And, I took that moment to pause and say that hurt, but I don't think you meant that, and meet that with compassion again. But yeah, I don't think I don't like the word fight or disagreement. We're trying to share our feelings. If there's something that someone does, your partner does, that triggers you, say, hey, look, this isn't about you. This is an old wound that I have, or an old trigger that I have. And when you say this, it makes me feel this way. And I know you don't mean it that way, but that's just how I feel, because there's still some stuff I need to work through. And we make it about ourselves, right? Nobody could argue how you feel, because how we feel is unique to every single one of us. And we're all entitled to those feelings. And the trick is having a healthy relationship where you can both hold space for each other to do that healing and go through the work and uncover these old traumas and things together in a safe space where you feel safe. You can bring it up, because a lot of times when we bring it up with a partner who maybe isn't matching our energy, they go on the defense. They think it's about them. And that's why I said early that it's not about us when we're under attack. Somebody's trying to communicate something. So let's listen.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Communicating their needs.
Yeah.
Jillian says the only way you'll dissolve that big energy is with compassion and love, because that is full of light. Now, if I may, Jillian, I'd like to actually break it down, my interpretation of what I just read and what I heard. And for me, what that means is that if it's appropriate and somebody is coming at me, and let's say it's someone of an intimate relationship of some kind, and I am physically in their presence, there's another behavior, another choice I could make, which is in that moment, I could actually say to them, what is it that you need from me right now? And if you feel safe enough ask them for permission. Can I give you a hug?
Mm.
Maybe that will be enough for them to realize like it's not about me. It's about an emotion that's come up from them that they're frustrated with, maybe in a relationship or about a part of their own self. And a lot of times, if it's a partner, a relationship that we're in, they just want to be heard.
Mhm.
And if they feel like they're not being heard, what do little kids do? They scream because they got to get louder. And if you're still not hearing them, they may drop on the floor and stamp their feet or roll around and scream and shriek. And ultimately, if you look at your friend, your family member, your partner, whomever, that in that moment is on the attack, is instigating, there's an instigator or a perpetrator in a fight, whoever throws the first dagger is the instigator. In that moment, ask them, is there something that you need from me right now? How can I be here for you? Rather than putting on the gloves and saying, okay, let's do it. If we take that loving, compassion approach and really look at that person, one of the tools I've learned how to do is in that moment, when I'm able to look at that person and ask myself, how old do they look right about now?
Mm.
And when I could see that person's younger self, I'm able to many of the times just kind of flip my own switch and go from anger and wanting to defend or fight back to really having a moment of empathy for them and going, wow. And then I have a greater chance of maybe even like suggesting a parenting moment where I just say like, can I give you a hug? Can I hold you? It's just a tool that may or may not work. Now, if someone's coming at you with a machete or a knife from the kitchen, probably not a good idea.
Probably not a good idea to be in that relationship. That'd be great.
There you go.
Look
There
out.
you go.
Do you think that might be a sign to say, I think I don't think this is working out.
It's not you, it's me.
Yeah, it's not you, it's me.
Not you, it's me. Okay, I think we're
I take full responsibility. I'll pack my bags and I'll be out
Really.
within the hour, if not sooner.
Please,
Look,
please
I mean,
write down now.
Ev, why do you think? Why do we think we even get to that point where we are triggered and we're in a fight? What is it? What does a fight do for us? That if we didn't fight, what would we have? What would we be looking at? What would it feel like? Why do we get drawn into the fight? Why do we want to have those fights? What do you think?
Look, man, there's probably many things that we could dive in just alone on that, why we get triggered into the fight. But we're always going back on past memories, generally, past thoughts that have created experiences from within our lives that have triggered some of these emotions and feelings that we're talking about. Man, I just love what you've just talked about there in creating that space of peace that you're talking about, Jay. If we think on the other side of that spectrum, if we're still living in duality, a little bit in this 3D as we try and transition into the 5D, where we could possibly live in inner peace, but in this 3D, what is on that polar side of the fight? I would say it would be peace, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So how can we get back to that calm state of being of inner peace? For me, come back to the breath. We paused last week's show. I mean, what a beautiful moment in real time that you could just stay still and pause and breathe together as one. How magic is that? In my past relationship, I've talked about many times, there were, spontaneous little, experiences that I was able to be in that same space with that other person in that relationship. And it was beautiful. We were able to talk through what may have been in the background, what may have been the noise that was creating the fight. And we were able to discuss solutions that would hopefully try and solve the problem that was underlying the fight. But if something just keeps repeating and reoccurring and you're projecting out these emotions and these feelings, You are not getting to the root and the cause. So for me, Jay, one of those prime tools, it's breath. Come back to breath. Slow your scroll, man. Slow down. And, hopefully then we can, like I said, come back to that root and find what's truly causing the fight to me, which is the very, very last projection of the energy, out of anger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sherry just came in, and I saw, I just blanked on it, but she talked about defending. And what Ev just said is so wonderful. It's about, there it is, listen without defending. And I'll give you an example in my life that just popped into my head, which is listen without defending. A friend of mine who is wonderful, my best friend in my life, has a wonderful way of holding the mirror up to look at myself. And early on, I've known her for 20 years. My friend Alex, she's watched the show many times. Something came up. I was on my way to do some sort of photo shoot at I think I've told you guys this story, but this I was hired to do this really high-end event at the Waldorf Astoria in New York. And this was probably around 18 years ago, 17 years ago. I was in the beginning of my stages of self-discovery. And I said something about wealthy people. And so unconsciously, she goes, "That's your father speaking." And I stopped, and she said, "Can I talk to you? And can I ask you not to defend yourself?" And when I said, "Okay, yes," and she started talking and telling, and I could feel energetically inside my body that raised into my heart and right into my throat, a lump in my throat, because I was honoring what she asked me to do. This energy that came up that I just wanted to defend my wounding.
Mm-hmm.
I was wanting to defend myself, but what was I defending? And she was explaining to me, this is your wounding. This is where you are. This is what's happening. And as she's saying that, all I wanted to do was defend that old conditioning from my father, that old programming from my father about wealthy people that he learned when he was a kid. So what we're defending is not ourselves in the moment of now as the adult. We're defending the conditioning, the programming, and the wounding. We're defending the wounds of that child that was programmed and conditioned with it.
Beautiful.
But what she asked me in that moment that arrested where I was, can I ask you not to defend?
Wow.
I love that. What do you think, Josh?
That's beautiful. I mean, for her to have the clarity, like you said, to just flip the mirror on you like that. And I'm sure it stopped you in your tracks, because that would have stopped me.
Well, she didn't say it so nicely, though. She was very stern and strong, stating her need in that moment, but said, "Can I ask you not to defend?" But it was like, "Can I ask you not to defend right now?" But that's what it was. But anyway, go ahead, Josh. Sorry.
Let me ask you this, guys. Switching gears a little bit here. Let's look at the model of a couple that have been together now for a number of years. It doesn't matter if it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or more. Up until this moment of watching Real Men, Real Talk live, they've got years of history together, layered, on top of layer on top of layer. And how they have shown up relationally, how they communicate when they are upset is through hurtful words, through escalated tones, through screaming, through whatever, fight, an argument. Is it possible? Do you think it's possible for a couple who's got sometimes decades of layers of hurts and wounds from these arguments? Can a couple repair the relationship? How do you erase? How do you erase all those things that were said and done in the heat of the moment? Can we erase it? Is it about forgiveness? Is it about trust? Is it about respecting each other, honoring each other in a way that perhaps you have not been able to? Is it possible that a couple can be healed of that and change the energy in that relationship? Is it possible? What do you think?
Bro, look, I'll quickly step in there. If you're talking like 5 years down the track, Jay Rothman, man, I mean, come on, brothers and sisters, don't you think it would be time to close the door? See, we've got to be learning that in that sort of time, Jay, 5 years, if that has continued to keep going on and on and on, is it time to let go? What are you holding on to? What are you holding on to? And for me, if that was to happen in my life, there is no way in 5 years that you should at least know about each other in that space and time. So if this keeps escalating, particularly like we've spoken on, based on previous and past situations, events, then it's time to close the door for me. What do you think, Josh?
It's tough because it's funny. I've been in awake relationships and I've been in I've had not so awake partners here in the later years, of course, because there was a point when I was asleep at the wheel and reacting my whole life for majority of my life, actually. Less time I've been awake, but yeah, it's tough. And when I was kind of transitioning into my awake relationships, I had a partner who would trigger me, and it's easy to fall back into that. It's hard to stay grounded and awake sometimes when someone's really triggering you. And I get that. But yeah, I think there's always one more chance. And I think if you can communicate, if you have had years, if you communicate that, hey, look, I want to tell you a few things. Don't take it personally. I need to share my feelings, and maybe give it one last try. And if that's not met with compassion, then like I've said, we are what we tolerate, right? And so get out. But yes, if that's met with love and compassion, then give it a try. Try that on for both of you. I get it. It's new if you've never had a relationship like that, and it's going to be a little awkward at first, and it's a little weird. And you just have to trust that inner self to communicate what you need, because that's all we're trying to do in an argument, like we said.
But Josh, wouldn't you think that's a little advanced if a couple has been in a 5-year relationship and they continually fight?
Yeah, if they're stuck in cycles of reaction.
To say, to even come across with that language, my thing would be, if in fact, I've worked with couples in the past, and if that was happening, the first thing that you'd want to do by doing this work is, I need both of you to look at yourself in the mirror first. And we need to start from the ground up to have each of you look in the mirror and ask yourself, if this is happening, if this fight, if this difficulty, if this duality, if this is a constant thing in your relationship, A, what are your models? And B, how is this serving you? How is this? You have to begin to be willing to look at yourself first and ask, well, why would you want to be in something like this? So you'd really have to get to a basic beginning of asking somebody about themselves and separately. And then maybe they'll find that, wow, we've created this out of something that we never knew. We can either shift it now that we're growing up, as Jay would say, enlightening ourselves with ourselves by looking in the mirror, or we could say, wow, I think we should go our separate ways. But it really takes, and getting back to it, you have to work here on yourself first to begin to become, like I said earlier, and Evan's saying, find that peace in here, that love in here for ourselves first, because we create our outer reality from whatever relationship we're having with ourselves.
There you go.
I want to just jump in here and kind of rebound off of your words spoken, Ev. To be fair to our viewers and listeners, if you're listening and you've been in a relationship that's at the 5-year mark or longer, I could tell you for my own self, I didn't know how to show up any other way. I hated the fight. I was an unawakened fighter. It was almost as though I was fighting, but I was already knocked out, meaning I was unconsciously living. I didn't understand. I had no awareness who was showing up in me when I was in an argument with someone else in my inner circle. And it wasn't until I stepped out of that circle that I began my own discovery, my own self-discovery. And I started to understand that so many of the times when we were fighting or disagreeing or arguing, it really wasn't about the marriage. It truly was that I didn't know how much work I needed to do for myself. I didn't realize how many deep wounds, experiences, pivotal moments in my younger years, not just my childhood, but even in my 20s, playing adult in my 20s, doing a pretty good job of it from a definition of wealth and success in the modern society. But as far as my relationships go, my relationships were already tanking in my 20s. I mean, whether it was the one at home or it was the one, my old one with my mom and dad, I mean, we were already at odds, and it didn't change. It didn't change until I hit my rock bottom, and I had to be willing. Jillian said it so beautifully. She talked about, she posted something about the couple almost needs to be rebirthed. She says each would possibly need to die and a rebirth for both, which would be an entirely new and different relationship. I have shared that so many times, and I've had the camera turned to me, and I've done an interview, and I talk about I had to be willing to die so that I could be rebirthed. And I even gave myself a new birth date, October 18th of 2015. That was the second day out. I got out of the hospital and I stepped into my first 12-step meeting to save my life. Not from alcohol and drugs, but from codependency. Mm-hmm. And that's what it took for me. For me, it had to be a 10. Because when I woke up in that hospital, and that was my first spiritual awakening in my life, I understood that it never was about my ex-wife. It never was about my bosses. It never was about my mom and dad. Mm-hmm. For the first time, I had an awareness that was me. Mm-hmm. I was wounded. I had never dealt with my traumas from my earlier years. I buried them as deep as I could in the earth. And I distracted myself with work and other addictions like food and cigarettes and sex and codependency. Mm. And when I took the first step, that first step was surrender. Now, I don't know if it's possible for married couples and long-term commitments to do that or not. I didn't give myself that option because I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think I would have enough time because it wasn't just the emotional part of the relationships that were broken or damaged or wounded. My physical health had taken such a toll from the years of showing up and fighting to survive in my own home and outside of my home. So I wasn't willing to risk losing my life at that moment. I don't have the answer to that. I don't know. That's why I asked the question, do we think it's possible? But I do know this. If only one shows up committed at a 10 and the other one's at a 7, still minimizing and still denying and still thinking that I'm not the problem, you're the problem, nothing's gonna change. It's just gonna one more layer, one more year, one more physical disease that's gonna be diagnosed for one of you or both of you.
Yep.
Dis-ease.
What we haven't touched on here, and I want to bring this up, I'm going to turn it over to one of you guys, is when we get activated. Jema, one of her comments was, she gets upset. Her body physically, she's aware of how she is impacted. We haven't touched on it, but really what we're talking about is we are turning on a switch to a fight or flight hormones, our chemicals that get flushed throughout our whole body. And then where that's the cortisol. And then we've got the adrenaline. And here's where, okay, bring it on. Let's go. I'm feeling it now. Even though in that moment it feels terrible, but you don't know how to stop. It's almost like you get hooked. You get seduced. How many fights do we get seduced into? Let's talk about the seduction.
Yeah, man. And that's what I talked about earlier. We've got to really become more intelligent about what this body is capable of. You touched on it just then, Jay, and I touched on it earlier, brother. I talked about these hormonal responses. But are they hormonal reactions? So you talk about, these things like adrenaline, cortisol. That's that stress hormone. But then you're thinking about these neurotransmitters. We've got those dopamine hits. We've got that serotonin hits. These certain things up in the brain chemically that are firing to really fire up those adrenal glands and get you into that reactive state. You see, when an animal out in the wild has its survival or its flight or fight state, let's say, for instance, a duck lands on the water, feels like it's going to be under attack. What's it do? It flies. It takes off. But you know the difference between a duck and us as humans? And I'm not saying like all of us, all right? We hold on to it. We hold on to that attack. And all of a sudden, guess what, my brothers and sisters? We've just become addicted to adrenaline, man. We've become addicted to cortisol, the stress hormones. So this is what I'm talking about. We really do have to sit down within ourselves and ask ourselves these questions.
And
what is causing the fight? What is the attack? Where did it come from? And why am I entering into the fight? Those 3 questions for me, brother. Sorry, Josh. You go, mate.
No. Sorry to cut you off. I thought you were
you're
taking,
right.
you were taking a pregnant, important moment.
Pause. Couple of pauses, taking a couple of hits.
No, and I was just so excited to see, because you brought up something else that's super important, is that the next day when we replay these arguments and the body doesn't know the difference.
There you go.
The body thinks it will respond to your thoughts and emit those same stress chemicals, the cortisol, everything, exactly like it's happening right now again. Now, what do we have control over? We've all been saying that we do have an element of control in the actual argument. We can switch to compassion. We can try and actively listen to what, the things we've been saying tonight. But we also have control over something very, very, very powerful, which is the replay of that over and over and over in our minds. And that's where I created all the damage within me over the years. And that's what caused me to want to take my own life, was because I was replaying all of those stories that I was a failure in business and that I was this, all the damage happened once and it was awful, but I replayed it and created a story around it. And I let that tape play for years.
Beautiful.
Thanks for sharing, brother.
Yeah, totally.
You know what just popped into my head? This is a guy thing, since this is Real Men, Real Talk Live.
I love you, Jeff.
When does your pride come
There you
in?
go. That's a big one, man.
When does your pride come in as a man that says, you're tarnishing my reputation and I have to fight you and defend myself because I'm a proud man?
Hey, Jeff, that's a beautiful question. And that's a great lead into, before we go into our close, because we're all coming up on the hour in about 9 minutes. I just want to put out there, how do our cultural upbringing impact the fight game? And I just want to kind of hone in on one particular culture. I grew up in New York, and I had a lot of Italians in my neighborhood. I went to grade school with a lot of Italians. Now, these young Italian kids, no diss, total respect. I love the culture. But I hear adult men all the time, and women, just in passing, I don't even have to know them, say, hey, I'm Italian. That's how I show up. So they actually give their heritage, their culture, that gives them the permission to show up and be a hothead. And I only bring that up because I've heard it so much in my childhood growing up in New York. But there's so many others. There's so many other cultures and people that give themselves permission to show up that way, because that's what the culture has for them. That's part of it. Is it really about that, or is it really more about that's what they were taught in their home by their moms and dads? And if it's serving them, great. But if it's not serving their relationships, why continue to play the old record album?
Well, doesn't it come down to you just said it, Jay. It just comes down to that's what they were taught. That was they were programmed. That's what they were conditioned.
There you go.
That's it. And that in itself is what we are when we begin the process of working on ourselves. That's what we are deconstructing. That's this whole process. That's what we're asking everyone to do by doing this show. Can you look at yourself in the mirror, see where you were programmed, what the conditioning is, what you were taught? There's wonderful stuff there, but then there's all that other stuff. Would you be willing to begin the deconstruction process of that conditioning, that programming, and what you were taught to retrain your nervous system to something brand new that you've never known before? Beautiful. It's a constructing process. I'm reading a book now called Falling Upward by Richard Rohr, and he talks about having to fall off the ladder and deconstruct the container that you built for yourself in that part of your life to then go to the next part of your life through that deconstruction period.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Jeff Fasano. It's at that time we're going to try to stay as close to the hour as possible, because one of us got to jump off the show and get on with our day over in the other side of the pond, as they say. This is the time of the show. We're going to do musical chairs this evening. What that means is you each have 2 minutes. When I pull you back out of solo, it's time to wrap it up. So we each have a chance either to share closing thoughts on the show, maybe some review of some liquid gold tools that those that get caught in a crossfire of a fight or an argument, what we can do to remove ourselves, or some tools to navigate new learned behavior in this moment. And so what I'd like to do is I'm going to actually put Jeff Fasano, you're in a hot seat coming out of the gate. You got yourself 2 minutes to either put a pretty bow in a show or drop some tools.
The first thing that comes to me is, and I think I mentioned it when we began, it was if in fact you get into that situation, we've all been there, and you feel energetically this fight brewing, and you're triggered, and we all get triggered. So if you can feel this coming on, but feel yourself being triggered inside of yourself, feel the energy moving up inside of you, ready to attack, ready to defend, and you feel it brewing, you feel you're triggered, your nervous system is engaged, and you're being triggered. As Evis just said earlier, it comes back to the breath. And if you feel that triggering inside of you, it's about asking yourself, it's about breathing in that moment and coming up with something in that moment where you can step away so you can release the charge of being triggered. Because that is when fights become volatile. That's when simple disagreements can become volatile because both sides are triggered. And then the energy surfaces, the energy increases. And then you become so charged that you lose every faculty of being an adult in that moment, a loving, caring, compassionate, peaceful adult in that moment. And then that wound is triggered, and then you get on the path where eventually all the fight comes down to is a fight to be right. A fight to be right. So if you can be with being triggered, identify that I'm triggered right now. As Eva says, use the breath. Quite possibly, you might have to say, you know what? I have to excuse myself for a minute or two here because I'm getting triggered and I need to compose myself. I need to release the charge. And then maybe I can come back. Can you do the same?
Beautiful. Jeff, beautiful. Thank you.
All right. Ev.
Let's dive in, my brothers. Beautiful, Jeff. Well, you just had me in some bliss there, man.
What does that feel? Hey, whoa, Ev. What does that feel like for you to be in some bliss?
Peace.
Can you put a word around it?
Peace, brother. I was in Zen. I was zoned out listening to what Jeff was saying. And to me, like I said earlier, on the other side of that fight, it's peace. It's peace, my brothers and sisters. We've been talking about fighting tonight. Is there such thing as a healthy fight? I don't think so. I grew up seeing many of them. I grew up in some of them as well. I talked about being in the ring professionally, doing a couple of kickboxing fights. After watching a couple of those fights, I said, no, I can't listen to people around the ring say, hit him, Ev, smash him, Ev. It wasn't me. Is it you, brothers and sisters? Is it you to enter in the ring, into a battle, into resistance? We need to really get down to the root, to the cause, and start really becoming more conscious and aware why some of these hormones, some of these emotions, feelings, and some of these thoughts may be layered that trigger us to step into the ring. You see, we're coming into a time, my brothers and sisters, where the only fight that we really have is within ourselves. And until we start to really learn, like I keep saying, some of this emotional intelligence, some of the things that we've dropped on at Real Men Real Talk Live here tonight, and some of our brothers and sisters are dropping in the comments, then we'll continue to be in resistance and fight. But as the great Rocky Balboa said, nothing is going to hit you as hard as life itself. So ask yourself, my brothers and sisters, what sort of life do you want to live? A life in the fight or a life of flight? Let's fly. Let's fly.
Beautiful.
Let's all breathe and take that one in.
Beautiful. Love that.
Beautiful.
There is so much gold that comes out of these shows. I'll tell you what.
Wow, you got me, Ev. Not Josh who got me this time. It's you.
Oh man.
Wow.
What's coming up for you, Jeff?
Oh, it's just beautiful.
Okay.
It's peaceful and beautiful, and I get emotional when it touches my heart.
Beautiful.
Thanks,
Thank
brother.
you so much, Ev. Josh Richard, you're up, brother. 2 minutes.
Man. Yeah, the fight for me was modeled when I was young. And I know my mom watches the show, and Mom, I've healed and it's okay. But I saw from my parents that if you wanted to be understood, you had to raise your voice and you had to yell. And I remember that hurt as a child, hearing that. And I'd try and shield my sister. Let's go play at the other side of the house or outside. And because I didn't like those feelings. And so when I was in my 20s, I modeled that. And that was how I knew you had to be understood, was to raise your voice and yell and get louder. And so I'm so grateful to break that chain. And I hope to not model that for my children at all. And show them peace and love, and what holding beautiful, loving space for your partner can look like, even if it triggers you, but communicating in an open and loving way. And so, yeah, but I get it. I've been there, and I know it's hard, and I know it's hard in the moment too. So I'm not discrediting how challenging it can be, especially in the moment when you're triggered. And so a real quick, for me, I guess, nugget, I do know a lot about triggers and and mismanaging them for a lot of years. But for me, a really helpful tool, what's happening in the body when you're triggered, is, like Ev says, or like we've all been saying, goes into fight or flight. So your body is literally ready to fight to the death because it feels like it's being attacked by the tiger. And your brain is a really bad judge of severity. So your boss yelling at you, your brain runs it through the computer and says tiger, and so it's not that we're overreacting, it's that the brain really doesn't have a great gray area. It's just either severe or not. And so what I found really helpful for me when I was in major trigger moments, that pause, remove yourself, and then talk inside my head and say, I am safe in this moment. I'm not being attacked by a tiger. I'm safe. And once I'm in a massive, massive trigger where all I wanted to do was run across the street and drink, I had a whole room of people. I bombed a huge pitch in front of, I don't know, 30, 40 people. And I bombed it so bad. And the one person I think I've told this story a long, long time ago, but the one person I wanted to impress just completely called me out that I failed and hard. And it was all that triggering of wanting my dad to approve. And so I was massively triggered, and I sat in the car and I had to say it over and over again. I am safe. I am safe. It's okay to feel. I am safe. There's no tiger. My life is not in danger. And I had to literally look around and say, is my life in danger in this moment? No, I am safe. So a tool that and that's in my book too, is the I am safe practice. Ask yourself, is my life in danger in this very moment? And more often than not, the answer is no. So you can say, I'm safe. And it's okay to feel like we've been saying, this energy has to move. If we keep it stuck, this is just going to repeat over and over and over. So through awareness and through opening our hearts, we can create that energy that space for that energy to move, and then it leaves, and we don't have to play these tapes over and over again.
Beautiful, brother.
Mm.
Mm.
Let's take a moment to pause and catch our breath.
Mm.
All right. I think we're on our 33rd or 34th episode since we relaunched Real Men Real Talk Live. And, you know, just when you think, where do we take it from here? What's the next, what topic haven't we talked about? There's so many there's so many more. It's interesting. I don't believe the word boundary came up in our conversation tonight. And
That was another show, Jay. That was another show, Jay.
So perhaps maybe next week that will be our topic. We'll see. But my closing thoughts, I want to basically acknowledge one thing right now. Mary Kelly says, parents who are upset at their children can put themselves in a timeout till you are calm. We are teaching our children we are not coping with our emotions, rather than teaching them how to feel and deal with their emotions. And all I can say is, amen, boom. We didn't dissect that tonight. We didn't go there about as if we are raising children, and whether our children are in a home younger or our children are out of the home and are still visiting, they are still watching us. On some level, we're still their mentors, even when they are resisting that, but they are paying attention. And our children mirror our behavior. Our children mirror how we show up for each other. And if we are giving our children permission to disrespect and fight and say hurtful things and wound each other, that's the download. That's the programming they're receiving for their adult life. What is our responsibility as moms and dads, as aunts and uncles? How can we impact positive, healthy mentoring in our own relationships, in our own homes? As a dad, I didn't always do a great job. My discipline in my home was timeouts. And it worked most of the time, not all the time, but it didn't guarantee that I didn't get triggered or activated by one of my sons. And it didn't mean that I didn't lose emotional control. I did. But I didn't know what I didn't know. And I'm at peace with that today because I've made amends to my sons. I've acknowledged, I've taken accountability for my past. But more importantly, it's how I show up today. To be more consistent, to be more loving, to express to them, to acknowledge them, to listen to them, to listen, so that they can feel like they are being heard. No different than a 40-year-old, a 50-year-old, or an 84-year-old. Ultimately, we all want to be loved, but we want to be understood, and we want to be heard. And when we understand that, and we can actually begin to put down our boxing gloves, unlace them, throw it out, and just be an observer, just listen. Do something that I never did in my life. Lock your eyes into theirs. Go in deep. Feel them. Hear them. See them. Honor them. And respect them to your best ability. Whether it be your child, whether it be your partner, whether it be a sibling, whether it be a friend. It's time for us to show up and grow up in all of our relationships. But there's a caveat. It doesn't mean that we accept the unacceptable behavior. we can change how we show up, but there's no guarantee that they will change how they show up. And so what we get to do is decide, am I willing to accept unacceptable behavior? Do I step out? Do I put myself in a timeout and say, no, thank you? And for me, that's what taking the boxing gloves off is about. And ultimately, I knew that I was going to be okay when I was able to say these words out loud. I have no more fight left in me. I just want to love. I just want to honor and respect myself and others in my life that I care about. And with that, I love you guys. You guys are amazing. I'm touched in this moment. I want to, Jamie Rodriguez, I love your post. Jamie Rodriguez is actually going to be a guest. I'm going to interview him this week on Real People, Real Stories. Just doing a little plug here. On this Thursday, I'm going to be bringing Jamie Rodriguez in for an interview to hear parts of his life story. He's been a fan and a viewer of our show for some time now, and I'm excited to have him in the studio. But I love you guys. I hope those of you in our viewership and listeners in our virtual studio that you all heard something tonight that maybe touched you at your truth and gives you the courage and the inspiration and hope to make the changes in your life to improve your relationships. Anything else, gentlemen? Are we good to go?
Yeah, man. Beautiful, beautiful.
I've got nothing else to say. I feel like I'm in bliss right now. Like I just feel relaxed and calm, and
Me too.
I am just feeling.
Love
Beautiful.
that.
Love it. All right. Well, let's feel this. Love you guys.